Hello and welcome to a new episode of the BIMvoice podcast. Today we have with us Steen Sunesen from Statsbygg. He is the Chief Architect and Information Manager. Statsbygg is the Norwegian government's building commissioner, property manager and developer. Welcome, Steen.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
It's so nice to have you here. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you. Yes, my name is, as you said, Steen Sunesen, and I do work in Statsbygg. I've been working actually only in Statsbygg for 1.5 years now, and has mainly been responsible project manager for the solution that we now call Simba, which is our relatively new requirement database or BIM requirement, now available in a database, but I will come back to that later. So for introduction for myself, originally I'm Danish actually, living in Norway for plus 20 years, and actually I have been working, educated architect in Copenhagen, moved to Norway to actually just to get a job, and both the job and love my Norwegian wife made me stay, and so I've become very Norwegian over the last 20 years. So, actually, when I look back in my career, I've been spending most of the time professionally with working more and more gradually with BIM, and that is actually what I work with now, and not just BIM like in models, but more like digital information. That's why I prefer the title information manager rather than BIM manager or BIM counselor, because it's all about managing information in an effective way and make it available for good planning, good decision making, and so on. So my journey from being a classic architect, as you are taught in the architect school, I was one of the first actually years where we had access to AutoCAD system back then. I did it voluntarily. It was voluntarily. You didn't have to use it. So I was actually probably looked upon as a bit of a nerd, because the architect school is about the art of buildings, and a lot about the textures and feelings and so on, which is important part because it's actually the only profession, the only discipline who have the responsibility for taking care of the people in the buildings, not just the technical functionalities and more like narrow-minded technical aspects of constructions, but actually what is the interlink between the human beings and the constructions. So, but I was actually in the beginning really annoyed by how inefficient everything was, from design to communication with clients and contractors and so on. And that was actually more like, I thought it was very cost inefficient, and it was a lot of repeating work, a lot of rework, so it was boring. And I also understood that one of the reasons why architects work very long hours, and at that time actually had very low salaries, that has improved substantially, at least in Norway, is because we do a lot of rework, and it's simply limited how much we can charge for being architects, simply because it is extremely time consuming. So we had to do something in order to simply become more efficient. And for me, it could have been if I had the chance to go for example, the lean way, I would probably have chosen that. But I was simply in a large hospital project, one of the first projects using openBIM in Norway, the Aarhus hospital outside Oslo in Lørenskog. And there we tested something relatively new, object-based, not entirely BIM, but object-based. But we also, and I was responsible for that in the end of the project, project manager for one of the buildings that was actually made entirely with using openBIM, the entrance building that you actually see in the daily news every time something is wrong on Aarhus. Everybody is is filmed outside that building. So I see it actually quite often in TV, which is very, and that's actually the first building, as to my knowledge, the first building built in the whole world that was actually designed using IFC. So Statsbygg had in parallel other projects, and I clearly admit that the quality of the models they did back then, they had much higher competence on working with IFC. So really have to give them that. But those projects were never built; they were not funded. So we could actually sit in the opening. We had a Building Smart event just right after the opening. There was luckily enough auditorium in that building, so we could actually meet there, and we could look at rendered perspectives of the very same auditorium that was made 2 or 3 years with the opening long before it was ever built. So we could actually walk around in the building virtually and see what was the decision making that made us actually come up with this design concept. So that was quite convincing. So that was and from then it was, I think that was very exciting. And at that time, BIM was still not really mainstream. That was like 2007. We finalized the building. We started in 2000. So it was kind of tough to come back to drawing-based projects. And then I got the chance to actually become managing director of Building Smart Norway in 2010, where I was the first managing director of the office, the established professional office of Building Smart Norway. It has existed many years before, but it was kind of the first secretariat they established, and that was a great privilege to be able to not just work in one project, not just work with architects, but actually to try to represent all disciplines in the market. And also, it really opened my eyes to both the client perspective, but also the owner perspective, the maintenance operation of building, which actually has quite low focus when you're a designer. Yes, we have a lot of ideas what could be a good, but I don't think that necessarily there's a lot of evidence into that. And for many years it had to be very technical, because it was like a lot of technical issues stacking up before we could actually even begin thinking about more holistic return on investment management on a higher level and so on. But that's where we are now. And I can say that for my current employer, Statsbygg, I'm very convinced that the position Norway has, where we are among the leading countries in the world using openBIM, we wouldn't have been there if Statsbygg has not actually been requiring openBIM in pilot projects from actually 15 years ago, and for the last 10 years in all projects. The hospital project I was working in was not in Statsbygg, but and of course that has a great influence as well. That was Helse Sørøst, the regional health authority. Unfortunately, it was not the same number of projects, so it didn't have quite the impact that Statsbygg has had. When Statsbygg comes out and say all our project has to be based on IFC now, that really does something to a market. It means that developers also know that they really have to deliver now. Solution for Revit and other tools, they were actually leading in. The vendors were leading in Norway to make sure that their products were able to deliver for their customers. So I'm actually, for me, starting working in Statsbygg, it's like coming full circle, because it's a great opportunity, and we can probably come back to that later. But it's a great opportunity for me to actually see it from the perspective of, as you said, yes, we actually represent the entire life cycle of the value chain from the early stage. We're consultant for all the governmental bodies that is not hospitals or defense, but we are consultant, and if some governmental body needs have a need, they're not satisfied with the current location, we can help them either to refurbish or rebuild what they have already, And that is, of course, a focus that we are looking much more into now, because we have to be much more environmental focused and sustainable. And if you can avoid building, that is, of course, the best solution. But of course, we do have a lot of building activities. So if you have a project, we represent as a client, also a commissioner when the building is finished, and the entire facilities management operation as well that we undertake. So we are really representing everything here, and that is a quite unique perspective. I think that we to see that how information can flow from the very beginning through the project, and also from the when we have experience with similar buildings, and that those experiences and information should also flow back to the beginning of the next project. So and this kind of the wheel of information that is very often depicted is like a bit naive illusion, but we could actually represent that. I'm not saying we have everything in place to do it, but we have the opportunity to do it and actually benefit from it. So I think that is one of my perspectives. I see why it's very interesting to work in Statsbygg. Yeah.
Yes.
That was a very long introduction. I hope so. It was okay.
It's perfect, actually. And there is so much I can build upon. Like you said already, Statsbygg, from me, I never worked with Statsbygg, but I always looked up to them for they have been the pioneer, like you said, pushing the most daring requirements. And not only for Norway, I dare to say, I've seen the presence of Statsbygg in international involvements or meetings. Like, it has been a good example for everybody, and you are keeping doing that still. And now I've seen that something that I think it's very, very important, and it's happening. Like you started working together with Bane NOR and Statens Vegvesen, and they have also came a long way compared to other places, but they are harvesting a lot from your experiences because you have been the pioneers. And it's really, really nice to see that actually there are people that believe that we can do things better, in a better way, in a more efficient way, and using our heads and the technology that is available, right? And not just thinking that, yeah, that might not work, it's too expensive, how much money are we going to save? No, you are doing it, trying it on the projects, not burning money. That's not the case. Is doing like in a smart way, trying it on pilot projects, and if it works, you go further on the or implement it on other projects. So yeah, I only have positive things for Statsbygg.
Can I comment on because it's true that we have a relatively recent formalized collaboration with Bane NOR. We also have good dialogue with Sygehusbygg, the National Hospital client organization, and Statens Vegvesen, of course, is also very interesting. It's true that when it comes to BIM, not using infrastructure, of course they are much further than we are, but we don't have really that much infrastructure, or actually we don't have any. We have infrastructure in our projects, but it's not really our. We're not the owner of those parts. So when it comes to BIM, it's true that we have some solutions that are probably a bit more developed, and we happily share that with others. And we have made the all our requirements in the requirement database available for Bane NOR. That was the agreement, and they can do whatever they want with it. But of course, we want to stay updated, and we actually have recent meetings, both specifically on that part, the requirement database, but also in general how we're developing the way we go forward. And have to say that we in Statsbygg don't think that we are ahead of others, because if you think that, you're already behind. You have to work together. You have to be humble. You have to put your ego, big ego, on your side. Probably you need a big ego to be able to pursue your dreams for many years. And everybody else say that this will not work, and you have to go that way. But you should not let your ego stand in the way of have good constructive dialogue and really listen to others. And I think that already the contributions from Bane Nord and to get their perspectives on our solution has been very constructive and educational also for us. And of course, we invite everybody else. This is not a sales speech, but we invite everybody else to participate with us, because that's what we want to do, and we really strong believe in standardization what we're doing. And I think all clients should actually have. We should standardize not the requirement, but how we require. Both in the agreements, like the ISO standard 19650, how that is being done, terminologies, technologies, and so on, that we have as much standardized as possible, and then we can compete on the content of and the quality of what is actually delivered. So if we can standardize, we don't have to reinvent the wheel in all projects and in every organization, and we don't have to persuade every project that our solution is better than what they used to in the previous project, because that is actually what we see now, that when we have put together a team in a project, they come from many places, very often not Statsbygg projects, and they have other experiences, and then we actually have to try to educate them in how we are working. And we're not saying that our way is the best, but probably it's one of the most elaborate and consistent ways of a system that so we're sticking to it until somebody can persuade us to do something more efficient. And I think that is our approach. It will we are learning from others by cooperating and gradually improving the way we do things.
Yeah, exactly. That sounds very good. It must be very exciting to work in such an organization that you see that actually is trying to do what it needs to be done, and not only complaining.
I have to say that when you see it from outside, it looks very glossy and fancy, and everything works. Seen from the inside, it is of course a lot of work to make things work, and the situation is far from ideal, and we're quite open about it. There's many things that many solutions that we think is not in place, is not mature, so we cannot bear the cost of developing it ourselves. But we are trying and helping and participating where we can. So there's a lot of activities outside our projects and outside our organization in for example, in standardization work and international work, development work. So it's and just as I said, in projects, we have to, every project has to succeed. It's not like that. We cannot afford to just to experiment and fail in a project. All projects have to succeed. So there's a limit to how experimental we can be in projects. There's been a few buildings like Digibygg. You take a small building and where we can have a very high degree of risk, and we can take a lot of risk because the consequences if we fail in some areas is very small, it's tiny, and then we can learn from it, and based upon that we can improve methodologies other places. But in general, in all projects, especially the large and prestigious projects, we have to be very focused and hopefully always actually used technology that we have, either that we know will work, or that is at least considered not very risky to implement. So just having said that, yes, Statsbygg is a fantastic organization, but because we are allowed to ask those questions, and we are allowed to challenge ourselves. But of course, from the inside, we can be frustrated that we are not developing faster. But that's a bit of the nature of the industry, that all projects have to succeed, and we cannot be so experimental that we fail.
Yeah, most definitely. I'm not saying that like you came to a level where you don't need to do any improvements anymore. And
No,
definitely we
that would be
see
boring, wouldn't it?
no, but it's still so much to be done, right? Like
Yeah. Yes.
to involve everybody across the supply chain, right? Maybe you are doing it, but maybe the contractor who is building, maybe they are still not adhering 100% to what you require to. Maybe they are not, each time you have a new contractor, maybe you have the same challenges and such, right?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
definitely something that, we are far away. But it's good to see a beacon of light. This is how I perceive this: a beacon of light, people that have the courage to go in the dark and try things. This is very important. Um, let's go a little bit to the basics. And please tell me, what is BIM for you?
Yes.
As building information
Yeah.
modeling, not
Yes.
building information model, but building information modeling.
Building information modeling, as kind of the concept of using digital representations for decision making and such. It is exactly that. It is an integrated part of all activities. It's about people communicating with each other. It's about working in sound ways. Sound meaning that you're creating value with as little loss and errors as possible, that you can pursue your goals, whatever they are, in your project or as a customer for us, and for us as a client, or you have objectives for different companies. So, and in the beginning, for me, it was very like the model. It was very much the bee in the building, and over the years, I've come to understanding that it's of course much more holistic. It should be all over, integrated in the entire value chain, all disciplines, and it's about information. It's about people actually. And the people part is something that is very often forgotten, because you have all these flashy softwares and presentations with models that can do a lot of fancy things, but the only reason why we have it is because there's somebody in the other end that has to do something, make a decision, make an offer, go out and dig make a digging in the ground, or make a construction, or facilitate construction, or something like that. So that is the perspective it is for me now, and that's why I choose to call myself more like, or regard myself more like an information manager rather than a BIM counselor, because I think it's quite narrow, and I think we have to lose the idea that the information is in one model, like a file or a model server, that everything has to be geometrical. We have to loosen that up. That is how we are designing new buildings. But when we are digitizing all existing buildings, they can never be on the same precise level, and they will consist of far beyond more than 90% of all the construction that we have. So when we are looking into the crystal ball and say like 10 years from now or 20 years from now, when all constructions in Norway is digitized some way, most of them are building that today is existing today, and they're not modeled with modeling tools. So they have to be digitized other way. The sources of information will be different also. So we have to be very in further work. We have to be very forgiving in where the information comes from. Except it has to be open standard, and the information has to be correct. But otherwise, the source of it and how it's linked together, that should actually be solved under the bonnet, not really a concern for the user, because otherwise that will be a major obstacle for implementing it. I don't know if I'm spinning off here, but that is the focus I'm having now. And of course, we have this idea of the BIM. We've all seen these models, very detailed models. But I think that information models will actually, for the majority of the industry, further down the road for operation and maintenance, which is where we actually put most of our money and resources as a society. Will be much more messy and not so geometrical, or at least not so precise as we are expecting from new designs in using BIM authoring tools. So that is that's what that kind of the reality that is beginning to dawn from us. Let's say Statsbygg, we are finalizing like 10 buildings per year. We have like 100 buildings ongoing, projects ongoing at each time, approximately. And but still we have 2,300 approximately again existing constructions. So the vast majority of constructions is existing, and they're not digitized in any way, and they're certainly not BIM in a detailed manner. And that would be our future perspective when we're talking about the digital twin for operational state. It's all about is the information, is it available? So is it open format? And is it reliable? Can we trust it? That would actually be the focus that we have in the future.
I see. Regarding the fact that you say you don't have all the buildings in a digital format, that might be a reason for that. Might be that, like, for new projects, you design starting with this in mind. Like, you will have a 3D model with the information, most of the information you need, right? But when you think about existing buildings, maybe you need like, that is a cost. Is not giving you anything maybe right now, right? So it's an existing building. So depends how would be possible to find a cheap way to do that, or what do you see the challenge for doing that, or is there just not enough capacity for? I don't. What do you think about this?
When you're digitizing building, I mean, one of the most promising and also used technologies is laser scanning, and one way or another, or of using that point cloud that a laser scan generates, and to use it as a basis for making a model at some level, often referred to as a slim BIM. It's not discipline models. You cannot really differ the different disciplines. It's actually just one big blob of objects and surfaces, and then you may have some points of information where you can point at products, equipment, for example, that are important for operation, where you can reference documents to, and so on. The technology for doing that has been very expensive, and therefore also unavailable for most projects and owners for a long time. The prices are going down a lot in these years. And especially, I think the more automation you can get into the translation from the point cloud to the model, and also if we can, because actually that's one of the things we're working in Statsbygg now, is to make specification not just for new buildings with the Simpa, but we are actually introducing the Simpa X, like in existing buildings, and I think that actually, which may seem right now as a kind of a byproduct, something we're doing on the side. But that will actually be the most important requirement set, at least when you see the number of potential constructions that can be applied to. And the technology for transforming the scanning to a model that makes sense, that can auto registrate as much as possible without making the geometry too heavy, for example, to handle. That is, I think, that is where the biggest challenge right now is, that it does take people to do it, and the cost, for example, when you say that. We have a cost of, I think it's about roughly 25 kroner per square meter for scanning and modeling a very, very simple model. That will be, if you apply that with 4 million square meters that we have, it's actually like 100 million kroner. It's not that expensive. It is expensive. You're not doing it without a cost, but it can be done.
Yeah. How cheap should be for you to make sense to invest in this, or to consider that is not expensive?
I'm not saying that. I think 100 million is not that far off if we can actually use the buildings in facility management and operations. So I think that when we can have much better understanding on how to facilitate, operate our buildings based on more centralized. Everything can be done more in the offices, planning in the offices, remote control of constructions, and of course a lot of that is done by is implemented now with energy control, energy management, not related to BIM at all. So, but to the extent that we see that using models as a visual platform for understanding the building and connected with photo registration as well, so you can move around in a model that actually looks like the building, and you can have like points of interest. You can say, I want to see what is this meter here, and actually get real life data on that meter from the building and link those two together. And of course that has to be developed, but once we see that it actually has a business case and we can make some calculation and see, is those 100 millions, for example, can we defend that in investment? So I think the prices has gone to a level where it should be assessed whether we should do it, not full scale, but on a larger scale, simply to see what the advantages are. And we're doing that. We are actually scanning and modeling for that purpose. I think more than 100 buildings this year and next year. So, and actually to get those experience, I think that's extremely interesting, because that is a relatively new path. It's a bit under the radar. Because it's not it's not really BIM because it's not so detailed, but it's actually representing an enormous amount of the turnover of potentially efficiency improving of a much higher turnover than all the actually relatively few new buildings that we're constructing using full fat BIM requirements today.
Yeah, well, for me, that is BIM, because you model information about buildings. Of course, you don't need the information for the design of the building because you have the building already. So as long as you model the information to use it to make more efficient your processes, so that's BIM for me.
But I really like your question. Is that you say how low should it be, and I don't have the answer because it's about business. So we don't know. And that is actually one of the problems that we have, is that we're not very good at measuring. We're not very good at either using and using also research. We lack a lot. We don't have the research tools to how to measure on performance of different processes. It's very difficult to go out and measure a lot of the activities that is going on in the industry. You can say contractors are the actors that are the best at measuring. They are also they have the luck that a lot of their activities is actually ongoing quantitative activities. It actually becomes something. You can measure on how fast you're making this concrete wall. You can measure on how precise it is. You can measure the cost and the pouring, and there's a lot of things you can measure there. But how do you measure a decision where the impact is you can only measure quantitatively in 2, 3, 10 years time? How do you do that as, for example, a designer or as a client? How do you measure the quality of your job when everything is not really, you don't have a benchmark, because there are no two equal projects. All projects are not the same. And for example, you see one of the curves, and I also been using that myself, that all other industries has growth in production rate over the 10 or 20 years, except from agriculture and the AC industry, but the construction industry. But I'm not sure that's true, because the building we're building today is much more complex and have many more requirements to them technically and environmentally than just 10 and especially 20 years ago. So you can say that even if it's a flat line, measure that it costs the same, with of course regulated for a cost index. We have probably been adding a lot of productivity using BIM today, just to remain something that looks like status quo, but is actually quite a substantial improvement in productivity. But we're not sure. We don't know, and that's actually what I miss here, because I think we have more or less come to a level. I'm not sure we are really getting much more efficient now if we don't get measuring and management into play. Measuring and learning together. You do the measuring in order to be able to learn what is actually working and actually not working, and actually also you get an understanding of what are the causes of why it went wrong and why it succeeded. We all have experiences from project. Everybody who's working project have experiences with things, methodologies or technologies that work good or bad, but we actually don't know really why. And I really miss that. And so we miss, and I think we miss even the tools for doing it. And that's why I call for research. And I think that there's a growing awareness of this, but I haven't seen any results of it. I kind of envy Finnish people a bit more. They have a much stronger research environment in the construction industry, and but I'm not sure if they're actually having any activities on measuring productivity using BIM, together with also leadership. The other part is leadership, because when we understand, we learn more about what works and what doesn't work, we need to change, and that's leadership. Has to be directed. We have to focus our development not based on available technology, but actually how we want to work. Again, it's about people. So and how you get the best out of the people that you have in your project. So I think that those are the part that we have to look into the coming years. And of course, in lack of more general research from like universities, we can at least start to measure using tools like, for example, virtual design and construction from the SciFi Institute in Stanford, that is really calling for everyone who is a decision maker or anybody who's responsible for decision making to measure the performance of what they're doing. And but again, that can be very, very difficult for a large part of the industry who does not have the benchmark. We don't know. Yes, we know what we're doing. We know how we're doing it, but we don't know if that's good or bad, because I only have myself and maybe a few other colleagues as a references, and we all do things a bit different. We don't really know. Yes, I'm a good project manager, but can I do it better? Of course I can, but I don't know how. So and we need those benchmarks. And we need to have a discussion about how we can do that. We're trying to actually raise that as an internal group in Statsbygg, actually across the different sections. I think that's very interesting. More and more people are getting a certificate, VDC, virtual design construction certificates from either Stanford or from the work Stanford has with NTNU. And I think that's kind of starting to generate a critical mass now of people coming together and discussing these ideas, and I think that will benefit. We will benefit from it, and also I think that will, instead of it's the tech guys pushing the BIM, and yeah, you can do a lot of things. You can make good coordination models, and you can have your cost estimates and so on. Instead of that, you actually have the project managers and the design team managers requiring the BIM and say, I want this BIM because I need to make this decision. And if I have this model with these iterations, I can make that decision much better and much earlier time, and save a lot of time and money in the project execution, or make a construction that's much more sustainable to operate. And we need that drive. We don't see it yet. There's a few pioneers looking into that, but it's not like mainstream. And I really hope we can get there. But I see a raising awareness of it. I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, It's very important, exactly that what you said, that raising the VDC competency, like people will see more and more and understand better the use case for BIM. So that's and especially in leadership position, because there is what I see not in stats big, but outside in a smaller organizations, maybe a very disconnected environment between the people that know how BIM works and they try to use BIM tools and everything. But in the leadership, it's like leadership is not encouraging this. They do because the lack of the understanding.
Leaders don't actually have to understand how the technology works, but they have to understand how the decision works, the decision process. And I actually think that a lot of leaders are not aware of that. What they are doing is actually they are decision makers, and they are facilitate decision making. That is leadership. It's all about facilitating. Make sure that you have the just the right amount of information that you need with sufficient quality to make the right decision at the right time, to break down a building and construction into thousands or millions of decisions in the right order. So you start with a large conceptual decision. Of course you do that, but actually to really understand how you can improve that, I think that is something that we need much bigger. I'm not saying I can either, so it's bloody difficult. But we need to raise the awareness here that as leaders, we have to be better at facilitate the decision-making processes and require the information that we need. So when you say that when we can just focus, it makes understand your own role as a decision maker and say what information do I really need, and on what levels do I need to know it. That will actually be the call for the model and say, well, actually the model has to be matured good enough on this level, maybe different iterations showing different concepts and what the consequences are in order to make that decision. But they don't have to understand really much of the model. They just have to focus on what do I need for me to make the decision. And once they understand that, I think we will finally bridge I would call it a gap between those working with modeling, the designers, and those who make the conceptual decisions.
Do you have any tips regarding this? Actually, how do you connect these two worlds? Like, how do you make the top leadership become open to this and understand and try to take some risks, if you can call it like that, regarding this? Because I like this is a challenge.
That is a big challenge because I mean, of course, you would start with to influence the projects with the largest turnovers, and that is usually also having the most successful project managers and leaders attached to it, and they have large egos, and you don't tell them what to do. I've heard that the two greatest drivers in the industry is envy and fear, and I think that's true. So if we can make good pilots for projects where you really focus on that, you start with maybe the few leaders that believe in something and are willing to pursue this way of working. Make sure you succeed, and you hold up. This is an example that you can envy in the beginning for the early adopters, and while you see the other projects starting to do the same, at a time there will also be a fear that if you're not changing the way, you'll be out of job. And I don't have better answers. I don't have like a magic wand to say that now we can change the mentality of leaders, project directors, and so on. I'm actually I've been in projects that was extremely ambitious, that had all the conditions was right. I mean, in terms of the right contract, the right incentives to work together, all the tools available, and so on. But actually experience that the lacking belief from the top level leadership that more like tripled down to the mid managers and further down the system, and I'm not saying it failed, but it didn't deliver on all the objectives because it was messy. because actually there was not a consistent belief that what they have actually established in the beginning was the right way of doing it. So they started working the old way when the first challenge hit the project. So I've seen that too. So it and really demonstrate how important leadership is.
Yeah. I don't know. I maybe I don't see too much material about this, but I guess you guys, Statsbig, can give to other people around or other organizations around many examples, right? Like there are many success stories. Do you put all of this outside there? Maybe like I'm talking about. I'm thinking. I don't know how much the municipalities are doing to employ BIM. I don't know if they try to integrate a BIM strategy in their organization.
Some of them are, yeah, and I think it's become quite mainstream. Actually, it's not that when I started 10 years ago in Building Smart Norway, we also had this approach that we wanted to promote the good stories. I mean, I think we could count the good stories in maybe two hands. It was like 10 construction projects ongoing or finalized that was kind of considered not failures. Today, I don't know. It's in the hundreds because it's mainstream. But I would say, are all using it in a way that actually serves them, make the optimal return on investment? Probably not. And I think that is the next challenge we have now when it's mainstream, is that we see there is a gap between available technology and the pioneering projects and the big mass of projects also in Statsbygg that are being produced by maybe not the top 10 design teams or contractors. And we see there is a lack of competence there. It's really a gap. And I would say that instead of focusing now on making new developments in new technologies now, we need actually to focus to raise the what I would call the mainstream, the rest of the industry to a level where we know that they can actually deliver on minimal sufficient requirement. So for development, you have this curve about the cutting edge, the early adopters, and so on, and then you have the lacking adopters and those who are resisting. And we're getting to the top of the curve that is not the early adopters anymore. It's the more like normal or late adopters and those who are actually resisting that we need to raise now because we need also in Statsbygg, as I said, we have approximately 100 ongoing projects at the time, and we need to have a consistent level of information from all projects. Otherwise, it's not fair, and we're not getting that. I can say I'm not giving you any numbers, but if I did, it would looking quite depressing because we're not getting nearly what we want. That's one of the reasons why we have now made this solution now to focus not just that they use BIM, but actually we require a handover in BIM on a specific level, and we're actually going to check all the models that is delivered to us. Actually, we want the project themselves to check it and give them the report to us. So we can see that they have documented that they're actually delivering what we're paying them for.
Okay, so you're saying that requirements are important on a project.
They are, and I think it's actually we need a change in how people think about providing services to a construction. If you're a designer, if you're a contractor, if you're a product vendor, you're very focused on the building, the actual building, and of course you are, because that is the end product of a project. But the value of that building is depending on how it's operated and maintained, and that again is depending on information. And because buildings are so complex today, it's not easy to get that information. So we need to have that information digitally available, has to be correct. And that is why you have to understand, as if you want to work with Statsbygg in the future, the information that you can deliver together with the building the information that we have required, is just as important as the building in itself, because it's an integrated part of the value of the building, not just the building as a physical thing, but the value for us as an owner and for the user, our customers, the governmental body. And I think that has to change. People have really, the industry has not understood this yet, but they will soon. We'll make sure of that.
That sounds very promising. How do you guys see the ISO 19650? How much do you adhere to it? Do you try to implement only that, or you have your own takes and views on different matters?
I think that the 19650 is, you can say that there's not one thing in the first part of the 19650 that we have started to look at that we're not doing at all. I think it's not like the 19650 invents something new, but it's a very consistent, systematic approach to do things and call things in a standardized manner, making processes very transparent, making sure that you're not forgetting something or somebody, and because it's standard, it's neutral. It's not client driven or contractor driven or designer driven. So everybody is represented, and that makes, again, as I said, you shouldn't really start to reinvent the wheel in all organizations and in all projects, like we more or less are doing today. Even though that we have a lot of standards to build upon, it's applied differently. And I think that this, again, can help us to for example, one of the things that I'm looking into now is actually how we can implement the part about how we are agreeing, how we require and agree upon information deliveries, which is basically the part 2 of the ISO 19650. The part 1, the basic principles and also the common data environment, for example, is something that is also looked into. We already have many of the components, but again, do we have all those components for very good information exchange in all project stages, and also for asset management? Are those in place? Are they connected? Do we have the right procedures? No, we probably not. So, but we're looking into it, especially also for requiring and agreeing on information deliveries. If you just focus down to the model, actually, one of the things what we're doing now is in all projects we say that these simple requirements, simple 1.3, which is the current version, is required. And nobody really looks upon that really during a tendering phase. And afterwards, we start talking with them how then actually to deliver upon those requirements. And that's not the right way of doing it, at least not from our perspective, because our negotiation leverage is highest during the tender phase, not after the contract is written. So we actually want all our information deliverers, companies that deliver information to us, to confirm that they're doing it, actually going to deliver how we want it, according to the SIMBA requirement. And if they have any deviation, now is the time to agree on it. After, it's too late. And that is, I think, it's a perspective that we're looking into, and we will pursue it. But it takes time for a large organization as ours to do such changes overnight. It's not going to be done overnight, I can promise you that. And then, of course, there are 2 more parts coming out, has just recently come out for facility management and data security. I have to say, I haven't looked much into it. They're very overall. Again, we are doing a lot of it, but are we using the right terms, terminology? I'm not sure. We have to look into that. Terminology is important because it makes it much easier for us to communicate with everybody who makes services to us, and especially also we have a lot of foreign companies working for us in our projects, and of course 9650 will be much easier for us to make sure that everybody are on the same page, because we really understand this document here is actually have the same function in our project as you used to in the other project in another country. So I think that is one of the strengths of 19650.
Yeah, that's true. It helps avoiding misunderstandings a lot. It can help regarding that.
Yeah.
You said previously, you mentioned a little bit that you are going to require much better documentation delivered. Is the fact that today the contractor or who is delivering you the building, they don't wait too much that they focus mostly on to build the building, and they see the documentation as not so important? Is that a fact? I'm don't know about this. I'm just curious. So
Especially when we come to the construction stage, it even when you have a very good as designed model, the information in that is partly used by the contractor and subcontractors, product vendors, but a lot of new decisions is made of the construction during the construction stage. And I don't know of projects where you successfully can say, you can say that all those decisions are actually updated in the model. The information level of the model from as designed to as built usually is there's a lack of updating the model during the design stage. So the as built, the model is not as built and does not represent the actual building, and often to an extent where you can argue that the model actually do not have the right value. And again, to call back to the argument as before, the information about the construction is actually maybe not just as important as the construction in itself, but it is a part of the value of the construction. So that's something we really need to address. We have actually reached out to the Contractors Association, EBR, to do something about it and to see if we together can make a requirement set for what do contractors need for them to do their job more based on BIM. So, and then we can forward that requirement to our designers, make sure the designers deliver that to the contractors. The contractors work with the BIM instead of requiring drawings, and also update the BIM. So we, in the end, and that is of course the carrot for us in this, is we get the models updated in the end. So, that's very new project here.
but this when you start talking about designers and contractors and you as client, now we come upon another important aspect, which is the contracting form. Let's talk about the contracts. After you tell me, let's say that there is a customer that are not using, they don't think like you, they don't care the documentation they get, they get drawings and everything. Why would they look forward to your approach, to StatsBig approach? Is there any value in this, like to get a better documentation delivered?
Yeah, I think it's the combination that at least some contractors, they have tried BIM and using information models to an extent so they actually know it makes their processes better and it makes their planning better. It avoids usually those projects where everything goes wrong and costs a lot of money. And also they know that they can reduce risk in their initial offer, so they make them more competitive. So, but that is of course when you all those understandings is on if they already are on a higher level. To get the smaller contractors and subcontractors, a lot of foreign subcontractors on board, it's requirement, and we just have to stand on those requirements. That if you don't deliver according to this, you're out. I don't see how else, because it's you need to have a certain level of understanding before you actually see what's in it for you.
No, I was not clear enough actually. I was thinking, like, let's say there is a client like StatsBig in another country, and they want like, why would they be in? Why should they employ BIM? How can they benefit?
As a client?
Yes, as a client, not contractor.
Well, again, actually, for us, it's you get potentially better processes, better communication, and especially better decision making. Decision making is everything for us. We are decision makers, and we facilitate decision making, and hopefully also in the communication with the contractor understand the project better, how they can compete, see the downsides of the risk, can actually be more competitive and give us a lower price. Don't have to speculate in changes. No, they can actually be competitive and deliver on time and money. So there's a lot of benefits here, but to have the potential benefit and actually to harvest the benefit, that is the challenge, of course, to be able to facilitate a project in a way that makes sure that you get it. And then you're, as you said, you're back into the incentive models. I mean, for example, one of the contract models that has been discussed also in Norway is the integrated project delivery, the IPD, which is kind of a, in Norway it's called samspil, alliance model. So there are many ways of doing it, and I think that you can build in. I've been working in IPD project, and it's fantastic where you can go to talk with everybody, even if it's a contractor or other disciplines as designers, and everybody is on board. Nobody says that, yeah, but I don't have an interest in helping you, so I'm not doing it, because you meet that. But again, I've experienced to go from person to person, and everybody were helpful also in other kind of more traditional turnkey or client control projects, and everybody was on board and helping each other simply because they had the right spirit and they were good people and they had a professional partners. And I also been in Samspil's projects, maybe not the IPD project, but Samspil project where people were terrible and not working together and only doing what they had an economical interest in doing. So I think it's very much like we said about before, leadership, and to have the right leaders, but it's also to have the right professionals. And you can only do so much. Incentives are good; they are helping something, but culture is also extremely important. Culture in business culture in the organization that you work in, or just in the group that you're working with.
Yeah, culture, the cultural change, which is the biggest obstacle. Yeah, indeed. Regarding like for a client, for an organization, like if they need to implement and have better requirements, if they would like to get a better data and such, they would need to make a big effort. If they today work by the old they employ the old workflow, right? Like if they would start requiring implementing a BIM strategy at the organization level, and starting having BIM execution plans and exchange information requirements and everything else, they will need to invest in this. They will need people with the competency. They will need tools. They will need some time to train and everything, right? But from this, like, would they save maybe, and could they make more with that information if they get it, that to save more during the facility and operation phase? Because this is how I'm looking at the situation. I see, like, with the documentation we get right now today, like, and let's focus on the drawings, right? It's not so much flexibility you have. You need to put in the physical work, or to go through PDFs to watch to look for details, right? You cannot read it that you cannot search in a tool that search for that detail and see where it is. It's very difficult, right? But would make sense, like, and there are people that have some archive rooms with drawings who never is going there to use them for tens of years, right? So I'm thinking, like, if you have a smarter or a better quality information, right? And maybe it can that lead to some savings during the life cycle, the operation phase?
And that's what we're hoping for and are working for. But again, we don't have numbers. We don't have numbers because we haven't done it yet. Especially for facilities management and operation, we simply haven't gone that far. But again, we are very bad with numbers. We don't have the benchmark. I think there is an American research from NIST, I think it's 20 years old now, saying that you can say like, or the cost of not having available correct information about your facility costs like, I think it's $2 per square meter. And then you can do the math in a relatively simple building over the years, how much that will cost. If you have like 2,000 square meters, it will cost you 20,000 kroner or something like that, current dollar price a year. And is that worth the investment? I'm not sure. I haven't seen anything else since that very old research, and I don't think why. It's the construction industry is the largest land-based industry in all countries around the world. So actually we should have much more research about productivity than we have, but we don't. And I wonder why.
Nobody's interested to find out more.
I think, yeah, maybe I'm living in a bubble with curious people, but I know a lot of people who are, but we don't know where to start because it's so huge, and we don't have time to make scientific research, and we need the scientific methodology, and we don't have that. So we need the research institutes to work with us here, and we need funding for that. Funding in a size and a focus that has to be on governmental level. I'm not aware of any programs around the world who have like a big program doing this. I mean, I don't. To make tools, measuring tools, we're back to measuring now, to make sure, because everything here is about, is this worth doing?
Exactly.
Everything has a cost, and everything has a turnout. Is the turnout better than the cost? Then we're doing it. That it's so simple, but we don't know. So we're actually, I've been working in the blind for the last 20 years. I have to admit that. And I made a lot of people happy, but I made them richer. I'm not sure. I can't say that.
Interesting.
Maybe I shouldn't have said that. Can you cut that out?
I can, but that would not be funny. It's okay. It's a casual talk.
It's okay. Okay. I think I have to live with that.
Yeah. No. So I'm thinking like, this is like, in order for this, like, let's say that no research body will do that. Like, for you to find out more on that, like, you need to start a process or something, like to monitor some of the buildings or some of the projects and see how, maybe use some machine learning or artificial intelligence to train it to give you some data after a while. But it would be difficult if you don't start harvest some data, or if you can go back and you have some data that you can rely upon. But I don't have any examples coming to mind right now. But
I know that there are parallel initiatives in Statsbygg looking at, for example, sensor data, and also assessing use of AI to see patterns in sensor data. It's not my field. I don't know the details on where we are. I can tell you it's very early stage, and I don't think we have it applied in any construction, at least not on larger scale for now. I think the construction city cluster also that Statsbygg is partnering in is also looking into that. So yes, it's quite new. It's very exciting. I wish I could tell you more, but time will tell. That's one of the other frustrating things in the construction industry. You can work a long time and come up with some result, technical solutions or standards, take you 2 years, but it takes you 10 years
to find out
to find out if it works, because the first building, applying it takes a lot of time to design and construct and maintain for a couple of years to see, does it work? Yeah, that's kind of the bitter reality of what we're doing here, that it's not going to make us rich, and we don't see the answer tomorrow. Never.
But what technologies actually do you think, or processes can we use to come up with something like this, with a good idea about this? Like, is like, what can we, like, let's say that you have all the resources you need, and what technology or what processes would you use to make that happen, or to try to get an answer for this very difficult question?
But I think we're talking about a multitude of technologies here.
Yeah,
And
sure.
I'm not the tech guy. I'm not going to point out one promising technology, because I think we need a lot of different technologies. So I would say open format, open standards, open API, whatever technology it takes. I don't care about the technology. It's about the information, and it has to be accessible from wherever perspective you look upon it from. That's how detailed I usually go on technical issues, without talking about specifics. And I don't think we should do it here. What you're talking about here, AI in following up existing constructions based on a lot of sensor data combined with models. That's a lot of solutions working together here. It's not one solution. If that one solution, that will be, that's what they build in the oil and gas industry. They have a few software vendors that are huge. You cannot do anything. They have kind of monopoly. It is kind of based on open standards, but you don't really. I'm not sure if they need that, because everything is integrated in one software. And when you discuss with those people, yes, everything works very good together. But if somebody comes up with a new idea to do something, it's almost impossible to get it implemented. But in the construction industry, because we have IFC, you have a lot of startups working with small apps that actually become quite successful. You see that all around in Scandinavia and the Nordic countries. Many of those software that are mainstream used today, they are actually solutions to something that the large, almost monopoly vendors did not were not interested in, didn't see the potential of, but somebody came up with it. And the only thing, one of the reasons why they really succeeded is that they were not having to succumb to one format. They could actually be independent, and that is IFC, and that's one of the reasons why we are requiring everything in open formats.
Yeah, actually, this might be the solution. Like to not wait many years to monitor how building is used. Going back, if we have open data from organizations that are willing to do that and use that, maybe to find some patterns or something. And regarding the closed environment and the monopoly, is the same. I'm sorry to bring the bad news to you, but it's the same for us as well. Like the software, it's very proprietary. Like we don't have too much. Like yeah, we start having IFC because it's pushed and to have this format, but the software mostly it's very proprietary. And this what is happening with this kind of solutions, like you mentioned, it's very exciting with the startups that with the medium. And but you see mostly what happens, the big vendors are buying this kind of solutions, and I don't know.
And making them proprietary.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know why, if to be, yeah, I'm happy for the guys for Spacemaker who just sold the company a few days ago. But from a part involved in AAC, I'm not sure if I should be very happy about this.
No, you can say that. It's yeah, they kind of did the entrepreneur's dream of making something and becoming rich. So it's then it's interesting what they're doing now.
Yeah,
How that's gonna go. And you've seen those patterns before. And no, it's true. It seems unfortunately that the large software vendors, international software vendors, they see it as a competitive edge to be proprietary and to build everything in their own ecosystem and make everything works there and not really prioritize open data. We see that. We're sticking to our requirements and
sure.
and hope that we can convince enough other clients to do the same.
Yeah,
So that at least it seems that it seems like Europe is kind of the open information stronghold. I know, of course, all software are one way or another proprietary, but it's about when you look at the exchange of information, to what level is it based on open formats or proprietary formats? And I think that at least we see signs going in the right direction in Europe.
yeah. I would. I don't know how much are you aware about open source. Actually, not only open format, but open source, which I think is very important. Like for other industries, like why do you think IT flourished so much and we benefit from so many good applications that changed our life, right? Because there is so nice, so good, so thriving open source community, right? For us, there are it's very niche. It's a very small niche, and companies, unfortunately, I see that could be something that could help. Like open source solutions should be, people should learn more about and try to support this, because it's always nice to have to not depend on products that a vendor might take it in a direction that you won't like tomorrow or something, right? So unfortunately we don't really have this culture in AAC for open source. We grew up with the proprietary solutions from the schools, from the universities, and we got used to this, and it's very little effort. But there are some things happening. I'm trying to get myself involved as much as possible with Blender BIM, for example, Blender BIM add-on, which is a 3D modeling add-on in Blender, which is computer gaming this modeling, which is very, very good. Like it's competing with the paid solutions. And the Blender BIM add-on, it's like try to make some tools that are good for AAC for this. But it requires much more involvement to get to something that can compete with the paid tools, right? But it will help if people like will involve more a little bit, learn a little bit more, and try to help. There are many possibilities, and especially, of course, organizations. But if people don't know about this, organizations won't support this either, right? So yeah, what do you think about open source?
At least we're in a situation where we have people like you starting to ask those questions and start to do something about it. And again, yeah, maybe we could all wish that things happen faster, but it only happens as fast as we make it ourselves, because we cannot expect anybody else to do it. I think you're right. We can learn a lot from the other industries, and there is a culture for being proprietary, not just with formats, but also information and solutions. And everybody wants to make this, to make to get rich, to do something right once and then sell it and become rich. But it's not how it works. It's not really how it should work. We have to share. One of the things I've been so irritated about, it's not directly the same thing here, is that all architect companies are making their own object libraries and think that it's kind of it's their chest of gold. And who cares about their object libraries? Everybody has their own object libraries because that's how they work. And you would never want the object libraries from other companies. Maybe if you're a very green startup with few resources, okay, maybe you share, but they're not. I mean, they're not a threat to anybody. So who cares about your object libraries? Stop arguing about the ownership to it and share it. I mean, we're paying you for your services, not your objects. So yeah, that's just an example of how we can, again, we don't have the culture for sharing. And we can learn a lot of that from IT, who started probably more like idealistic before they got rich. So you still have this idealistic approach in parts of the communities. We could need that, but it's emerging. I think you're a good example of that, since you asked the questions.
Yes, I'm trying. I really believe that we need alternatives. Yeah, it's a lot of work to be done, but it's not impossible. I'm not the right guy to tell to that something is impossible. It's just a matter of more steps to get there. But yeah, you need to start some.
In starts with, we're never going to say that even if you have like open source sort tools or anything, we say that you have to use that, but we cannot do that. But we can of course say that you have to be able to communicate with, let's say right now is the IFC. We hope for better solutions, for better both exchange and also editing of geometry and so on, that you have today with IFC. It doesn't really work that well. We know there are limitations of what you can do. So of course we're looking into new opportunities. If you see that a number of products start to support open format solutions that will bring us forward, we can start to require that and make everybody else follow. So we're hoping for that.
Is there something important that I missed ask you that should be important for the built environment to know about, like regarding BIM adoption? Some points that you would like to underline?
I think you picked my brain pretty good now. I don't have anything right now that comes up in that will not be kind of a summary of what we talked about for the last 1.5 hours.
Maybe a few
Yeah.
words about Simba. What exactly Simba is, and in a few words.
It's a kind of umbrella name for a set of solutions, but the most important part is that we have taken most of our requirements and be very specific about them into a database. So you have specific requirements for different object classes like valves and pumps and lamps and walls, and say this discipline has to give us information about this object class. On that level, we need identification, we need that level of geometry, and we need those properties about it at this stage. And then we have preset. We have a project model in Statsbygg where we can require according to it. The most important part here again is that you can take that requirement in an open format, requirement machine readable format. Right now it's MVD XML. You can also use Excel. We're working on that. We're also looking into this very new project called IDS that will lower the threshold of it's easier to program with than MVD XML. But that's a startup. We're looking into that. So we're very open to that. But right now it's MVD XML. You can have it, for example, SimpleBIM has already implemented it. There are other companies, there are solutions that are following now. So I think at least one other solution will follow next year. They can check the IFC files according to that. And that is the eye in the BIM that will, the information it will check. Is there any information here where you require it or not? It doesn't check the quality of the information yet, but we're also looking into that. This will take a long time to develop to become more and more automatic. But right now it works very fine. We have a good experience with the first projects that we have applied this on since the requirement went in place since the start of this year. Very good experience for both in large projects, small projects. Say that it actually helped them to get better structure on the model and also better cooperation between the disciplines. So this is a win-win. And then of course there are some other information about more like a few other general requirements, some guidance, but we have moved away from giving a broad guidance to everything. Actually, we think that the industry, especially designers, contractors, they're much better at their processes and using BIM than we are now. So we should not tell them how to do things. We just tell them what we want, what kind of information, open format. Well, how they're doing it is not really our business anymore. But then, of course, we give a few guidelines guiding to the new things like coding, classification, process status coding, and so on. What we see into that. But that's basically that is the simple solution. It's for new buildings, as I said, and then we have a coming requirement set also for existing buildings. What the minimal requirement for making model of existing constructions as well. So and then we have a lot of things on the simple solution. I hope next year we will start a project to make reference models. So if you're not very interested in looking at sheets of requirement where you are actually more focused and used to work with models, you can have a model where you can see how things are done, both proprietary and in IFC. So you can see, okay, so this requirement has to look like this, can be applied in a project like this. If I'm doing it the right way, then it will be accepted. So that will of course be a part of the Simba project as well. And then we're looking into if there are parts of 19650, for example, that should go into this database, this solution. So maybe all requirements are available from the same database instead of something is in a database and something is on our homepage. So make everything available in one place. So, but that's more like user interface and make things more easier to use. So actually, we're doing software design here, solution design on a shoestring budget and just a few people. Very exciting, but we cannot do everything at once. So, and right now it's a bit of an expert system. It does require some skills to operate it, but on further down the road, we expect it to be much easier to use and also translated to Norwegian. Right now it's in English because we work together with the solution vendors are in Germany and Finland. So, but it will be translated to Norwegian.
That sounds good. Regarding the requirements, are the requirements formulated with facility management in mind or just for the building to be built?
It's more like the handover, because we are not mature on a level where we can say that we know that we are going to use the BIM like this for operation. We don't know that yet. So what we're saying is we're building in some key data that you can reference and find, and so you can kind of link the model to the already existing system where you have the construction, the actual physical construction, with also you can have physical tagging of certain elements, technical components, and so on. And then you have a huge pile of hopefully structured documentation of your construction. And we want to place the model, information model, somewhere in there, so it becomes a part of that. So you can both link the physical building with the model to see them geometrically together. And also you can look up, for example, documentation from the model. So you point an object and you get access to it without knowing that you're actually bridging several different solutions, but via, for example, openAPI or one common solution, making everything available. That's kind of where we're going, but it's not in place yet. So right now it's just kind of the key holders, like the classification coding for the TFM, as we call it in Norway, for example, or GETIN, a global trade item number for GS1, to get access to product vendor and product and type information. That kind of data we're doing now. So that's more like the handover. We don't know. Actually, it's a bit of a uncharted territory how we're going to do it.
Yeah. COBie, are you using COBie at all?
No, I have to say no. We're not using COBie. COBie has an approach that is not very sympathetic to us. It's like data drop. When the construction is done, you more like squeeze your model like a lemon. So you get a lot of information out of it in a systematic way, for example, a database or Excel spreadsheet, and then you update everything there. And there's no link together back to the model. So the model is de facto obsolete the day after you start working with your construction. So before we can have a link back to the model, so you can work with your information in what database you want or what tool you want, but it should be linked. And before we can do that, it's not interesting. But I think the learning from COBie, that they have identified a lot of information that is relevant. Yes, I think we can learn from that. And there is now an ongoing project in Building Smart International that we are actually, Statsbygg is part of, that is called the International COBie. So to internationalize COBie. COBie is a US system, very much linked to US classification and an Anglo-Saxon way of doing things, which is very regulated and probably not precisely as we do it in the continental Europe, and especially in the Nordic countries. So I look forward to see what learning we can take from COBie when we are making making a more international and neutralized version of it. I think we can learn a lot from that, but it's early stage. So I'm not sure what the learnings will be here.
I understand. One last question. are you employing any of these technologies like VR or virtual reality or augmented reality or drones? Are you using yourself
I myself use VR a lot and I used in several projects. I'm not in projects right now, so I just use VR at home with my kids. But I have worked with it in construction also professionally, and I think it's a good tool for decision making, especially for users, not non-professionals who don't have understanding not even when they see a BIM, they don't really have the spatial understanding of how it works to walk around between these rooms and how it will function. But once you take the VR on, they get their own scale into the design and they understand it immediately. It's very communicative. I'm not sure if we're using it. We don't have a centralized way of using it. We have some whiz kits in some of my colleagues who are very good at this, who can support projects, and we have solutions also, but it's done in projects. We also have a cave solution. I'm not sure that is used. Augmented reality, I'm not sure about that. I think that augmented reality is interesting when there is a reality, which beginning with construction, and that's more like the contractors department. I think we should definitely look into it when we talk about operation, especially operation in areas that might not be easily accessible, or when you want to remote control technical rooms with a lot of gauges and so on, where you can actually get access to a lot of different data and so on. But now I'm just inventing things here, making things up in my head because it's not done yet. But that's what I see where we can use it, where it can be applicable, of interest. But I don't know. Drones are used more and more for registering from the outside of building, both of existing building. Of course, contractors use it to monitor progress as well. So I think that is one of the technologies that we see emerging now. It's quite promising. Also, the price is going down, the quality of information is going up. So, but I don't personally have a lot of information about it. I have to say.
Yeah, that's good. Well, Steen, thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me. It's really interesting. So yeah.
I really took some time to pick your brain here, so I hope it's fine for you.
It's completely empty now. I can promise you that. So
yeah, thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Bye.
Bye bye.